Thank you all for coming to our faculty perspectives on developing a study abroad program. We'll be focusing on short-term programs today, which at St. Thomas is mostly over January. I'm Dan Albertson, Associate Director in the Office of Study Abroad. With me, just to have them introduce themselves, are our two program managers who many of you likely know, especially if you've worked with study abroad in the past, and all of them introduce themselves quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Viner, one of the program managers.
Hi, I'm Jen Rao, and I am the other program manager.
Thank you, Jen, Lauren. We have three faculty today, all of who have led programs multiple times in a variety of locations and a variety of disciplines. So I hope you can learn something from them. The format for today is we have a few questions that I will be asking to our panelists. They will respond to those. If at all possible, we'd like to hold the questions towards the end. It just works better for a recorded format. So we have our kind of speaking and then the questions at the end. Feel free to put them in the chat box as well if you want to kind of park them there, and then we'll go forward. And to our panelists, what I will plan to do is that we'll start with Deb and then Hong and then Mike with the first question, and we'll kind of cycle through. So I'll let you know who should start the questions so we have some kind of variety in there. So just to start with, to our three faculty panelists, could you please introduce yourself, your department, your college, the programs you've led, and all of those details.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deb Besser. I am in the School of Engineering, and the program that I've led twice now in kind of two different formats is a J-term class called ENGR 271, Roman Structures, Engineering, and Society. And first time I worked with folks that have been leading this class for a number of years, and then the last time I offered it, I did it by myself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hong Wu. I am from the economics department. The name of my program is China's Economic Transformation, Reforms, Challenges, and Prospects. It was offered twice in January 2018 and January 2020. So we spent 10 days in Beijing and 10 days in Shanghai.
There we go. Sorry. I'm Mike Axel in the Math and Actuarial Science Department. And we run a J-term course in London with one of our actuarial science courses called Risk Management and Insurance. We've run it 4 times, and I've been associated with it twice and been over with it once in London.
Thank you all. So now just to get started with really the meat of the questions, could you describe your experience developing your program from the initial idea to actually being on site, leading it with students there? And we'll go ahead and start with Hong on this one.
Before the course was converted to a study abroad program, I was teaching the same course on campus, Chinese economy, Econ 346. I have always thought about developing a study abroad course in China, but never really took action. Then until like my colleague, she approached me. She's never been to China. She doesn't speak Chinese, but she approached me and expressed her interest. She knew that I'm teaching a course in China, so she was like, should we consider like develop a new course, make it study abroad? I was motivated. Okay, it's great to know that there's mutual interest. So I think it's really important to move your ideas to like an actual program is to take the initiative, to take action. So that's how we ended up talking about making the course actually like a study abroad program.
And Mike, we'll go to you.
Yeah, so the course that we take abroad is a required course for the actuarial science students, and we've been offering it for about 20 years. And in about 2014, a faculty member at the time really thought that it was important that the actuarial science program have at least one course that's a study abroad option. And this was the obvious one for us because it's kind of a survey of the insurance industry. And London is and essentially always has been sort of the birthplace of modern insurance and still the international headquarters of insurance. So it was sort of a fortuitous fit. And so we offered on campus in the falls and in every other January in London. And it's just kind of been a really smooth fit for us.
And the Roman Structural Engineering and Society course has been a course that has been around for a number of years. It's been offered every other year, but it's gone through some permutations. I think it's evolved and it's been responsive to the needs. So the course serves as an elective course for engineers, although others are invited to participate in the course. It is primarily populated by engineers. And the idea, I think, developed in terms of providing an experience where engineers could understand like what was the historical underpinnings and some of the technological advances that kind of happened quite a while ago in terms of historical reference. So looking at arches and in the bridges that they have and understanding domes and understanding the architecture and the structural functions that still impact engineering today. So that was sort of some of the background information there. And of course, there's clearly some connection to some of the Catholic components of the faith traditions that were originally, connected with St. Thomas, and I know we explored those more broadly, but there is a clear connection to Rome and the Catholic underpinnings of St. Thomas. So that certainly influenced the place that we go to. And it has evolved to include a much more richer, thoughtful, deeper understanding of how international engineering influences our engineers today, right? And how they need to understand not only engineering in terms of, the context that they're receiving it right here, but to have a comparative system to, explore against their own engineering experiences here.
So if I could ask just a quick follow-up on that question of all of you, thinking about how you first came up with this plan and working with your colleagues in your department, seems like all of you kind of built upon the work of some of your colleagues in your departments. What have some of the things that have changed over time, maybe from the initial idea or even from 2018 to 2020? And anyone who wants to jump in here, please go ahead.
Maybe I'll just jump in to expand a little bit upon what I started in on sharing. And that is that, we used to go over to Italy and perhaps not really explore that intersection of society and engineering. And now we're much more thoughtful. And this is a core piece of the course. And we know that when our students then, are out interviewing, that they're able to articulate that and their employers are saying this is something of significant value. So that was a very thoughtful component that has evolved and will continue to evolve as we better understand how to do that even better.
I can jump in. I'd say for our course, It probably took us one or two run-throughs to really fully utilize sort of the international perspective that was available to us in London when we run this course versus that which is available in the Twin Cities. And so I think that the first time or two, we kind of tried to take this Twin Cities content and impose it on the London course. And that didn't work too well for a couple of reasons. One is we're going from a fall semester course, 14 weeks, to a 3.5 week experience. And so certain things don't translate well for that. And then the other thing is that there was simply a very different insurance perspective available to us in London. And we just kind of took a while to fully embrace it and realize that though these courses, when they're offered on campus or when they're offered in London, have the same number, ACSC 220, and the same general ideas to them, they're very different courses, and that's fine. But it just took us a while to sort of talk ourselves into that, perhaps.
For our program, I think I can mention like two big changes I made. Number one is to increase the personal connection. Students told me they love interact with local people. The human touch, personal connection is so important. That's the best of their experiences. So the second time I added more, like we visited an elementary school in Shanghai. So they had a great experience with Chinese kindergarten, not elementary school students. So I'm planning on to add more human touch, personal connection to my program. The second change is that although we have long lectures, so we have a really full, busy itinerary. 90% of the lectures are still taught by me and my co-director. So we still need to teach like economic principles models, just apply them to China. So we have this long lecture, like a 2-hour lecture, but students still let me know that they're okay to stay after the lecture, just to have like maybe 45 minutes to follow up, have discussions about maybe like more often, not on a daily basis, but like more group discussions, more reflections on their experiences and the material they learned. I just demonstrate their curiosity and their willingness to learn and to digest. So that's like two things I think I should pay more attention to and add more discussion time and a more human touch component.
Oh, that's fantastic and really kind of interesting how each of you have adjusted over the time. One more question to just follow up is that I know each of you work with a program provider supporting you on site. So how was that experience working with an outside organization to really make your vision into a reality and make it into something that really is impact for the students? How did you get what you want? How did you sometimes have to navigate some challenges with that relationship? And so how was working with your program provider?
We worked with CIEE, Council of International Educational Exchange. I think I had a great experience working with CIEE. They are like well-established international organization for educational exchanges. You have more options. So for example, as a faculty, I know I want to bring my students to the Great Wall in Beijing, but I didn't know that CIE had a program, so they recommended that we can do an overnight excursion. We stayed in a rural village, so just like really close to the Great Wall. So students had a sense of part of the rural China. So they have more options because they have so many programs all over the world. So they have really experienced professional staffs. So I incorporated a lot of activities, site visits, and guest talks based on their recommendations. Okay, so I think we have different comparative advantages, and I learned a lot, and my program became richer because of this cooperation with the CIEE. While in China, we always had at least one assistant from CIE to accompany us. Okay, it's extremely helpful to have that local support to back you up.
I would echo almost all that. We work with AIFS in London, and we utilize them for basically virtually all of our logistics, which takes a huge burden off program directors. We also utilize them to help sort of fill out some speaker slots that we might have. They often have some good connections, especially if they've worked with courses like ours from other schools. They kind of have a a Rolodex of people that are good speakers. And one thing I would just not caution against, but one thing that's been our experience is sometimes we have to kind of push back against AIFS, like say, hey, no, we really want the flight to go through here because it's going to be cheaper if we take one more layover and stuff. And I mean, AIFS wants to put together a quick package and get you to sign off and write the check. And so sometimes you have to not negotiate, but just sort of say, no, this is what I want. But in general, I mean, I think they've been a lifesaver. They've reduced the workload, I think, I don't know, 50%.
I'll echo some of those same ideas. We work with an independent service when we are in Italy, and Italy requires that these services be licensed in specific areas, and they have advantages that I think the kind of person off the street simply would not have in terms of getting tickets to the Coliseum, or better understanding how to navigate the various high-speed train options that we have, and also making connections for things that might not be standard tours, right? So if we want to see maybe a different transportation system, they have insight into how to perhaps do that. And they also serve for us as a cultural interpreter, right? I'm clearly not going to have all the answers or all the insight into perhaps those unspoken cultural components. And yet the person that we work with, Claudio, is able to provide that perspective because he lives in Rome, or he lives in Italy, and he's able to give us greater insight and perhaps answer some of those questions that I otherwise would not be able to.
Oh, that is just fantastic. And interesting how each of you have in slightly different relationships with each of the people you work with. In what ways, you've already touched on this, but in what ways have each of you incorporated the location into your course in a way that really makes it an experience that can only be done in that location where you are?
I'll start off because you can't experience the Coliseum. You could either put on virtual goggles and have that experience, right? And you could go to the Pantheon in a virtual experience, but it's so different when you're there. How do you hear it? How do you feel it? How do you get all of the senses in terms of what is that experience, and what does that mean to, we'll call it the engineering client, right? Or the person that we're designing for. So being there is key to understanding the engineering that's there.
I'll step in. For us, I would say there's two things that are essential about London for the way we now run the course when it's in London. The first has always been the presence of Lloyd's of London, which is, I don't know, it's a clearinghouse for perhaps 90% of the insurance that's written in the world somehow passes through Lloyd's of London, and it's been the heart of international insurance for over 300 years now. So we do a site visit there. We spend about a day there, and it's a spectacular place to visit, and it really drives home everything we talk about in the course that nowhere else could. And then the other aspect, which is certainly second place to Lloyd's, but when we're in London, we have access to people who are working on insurance in developing markets. And we simply, I guess we could have access to those people via Zoom while we're in St. Paul, but it's not the same as having the speaker right in front of the students. And so that developing nation market expertise is available to us in London, and it's not available to us in the Twin Cities.
China is the second largest economy, and the China-US relation is probably one of the most important bilateral relations. Most of our students are econ students and business students, so they have a genuine interest in the Chinese economy. How did China become a supermarket power? Plus, there are so many misconceptions and stereotypes about China compared to Europe, and China is very different. I'm sorry to see that the media has done a terrible job reporting China. You really don't understand what's going on in China unless you really go to the place and see with your own eyes. And I was born, raised, educated in China. So I spent 24 years in China, then I came to the States. Now I spent 22 years in the States. So I spend about equal time in both countries. So it's a perfect match for me to teach this course in China. It's really unique in my case because I view myself as an instructor, but also I'm a host because I'm like inviting students to my home country. I view myself as a little ambassador. So I wish I can provide the bridge for my students so they can see China in their own eyes and they understand China more objectively and rationally.
Just to follow up, and I'm going to spring this on all of you, is there any general advice that you would give to faculty of what types of on-site experiences are really impactful and really have that both lasting educational impact, but capturing the students' interest right away as well? So what types of experiences do you look for? Are there anything that you think definitely do this type of thing, definitely stay away from this type of thing? And please jump in, whoever might be ready.
I'll share that I found that setting up an anticipatory set before we go to a location is key. Students, they're kind of tired. They've traveled. They're there for 3.5, 4 weeks, and they're, at least in a J term, they're also there with their friends. So there's a lot of distractions, right? And so I find that I have had to kind of laser focus their attention to say, first, just open up, what are their prior experiences? What are they anticipating? Set those expectations so they are ready to essentially be curious about what we're going to be experiencing. And then when they're there, the expectation is that they are taking notes, that they are observing, that they're using all their senses, that it's not just, we're not just there for a field trip, right? And then afterwards, the expectation is that when we debrief, everybody is all in, and that there is an expectation that you are contributing to the conversation to explain what that meant. It doesn't matter where we were or what we were there to explore, but having both kind of a pre, a mid, and a post component of those daily visits is I have found kind of, the hard way is key to the experience.
I think one thing that I would highly recommend and kind of surprised me with how impactful it was for students is the opportunity for the students to interact with people, in our case in London, in the industry that they're thinking of getting into in an informal setting. We have formal speakers come up, give lectures, but we will often have an evening social hour, 2 hours at a pub with some folks in the insurance industry. And that continues to really impress me with how much students get out of that, just to sort of start to talk beyond the industry and talk about, well, what was school like for you in UK, or what was the actual exam process like in a different setting, and what's corporate culture like here. So an opportunity for that type of interaction, I think, is invaluable.
Yes, I totally agree. I've mentioned already, students really enjoy interacting with local people. So if you can add more human touch to your program, that's really helpful. And also like in Beijing and Shanghai, in some places, some of the activities, they told me that this feels like America. I'm still in America, so I want to see something different, something authentic, something Chinese. So yeah, then I think that's a point to offer some unique experiences that really are connected to your location, to your host country, not like close to what they know at home.
Thank you. And this next question, Deb, I'm going to prompt you. I'm going to have you go last because I know you have some slides to pull up. So thinking about how you actually get students to your program, because they're not going to go unless students apply and are ready to go abroad with you. What are the best ways that you've found to attract students? Are there any design elements that you have in your program that you think students are like, they are really going there for this reason? And if I could have either Mike or Hong start, because Deb is going to pull up some slides at the end.
Yeah, I can start. I think I'm with some advantages because we're going to China, right? Because many students told me going to the Great Wall has always been on their list. So I really did. So a lot of them are just naturally interested in China, the historical side. So it's a little bit easier for me to reach out to students. I use like traditional ways, just you post like flyers all over on campus. You send emails to your majors, minors. Our faculty make announcement in class, in all econ classes. One example is like we reached out to students who were taking Chinese. They're not econ students, not finance business students, but there might be potential interest. Okay, so we also reach out to those students because they speak Chinese, they might have a desire or motivation to go to China. So something like untraditional, like think about where your potential applicants might be and then reach out to that group.
Yeah, I'd say we do the same kind of things that Hong has mentioned. One other thing that I think has been really helpful for recruiting students to our program is we will have an information session where we let students who attended the last iteration in London speak about what the experience was like for them. And I think, that gives the prospective student the perspective that they're really after, as opposed to mine or my co-instructor. So we'll have that information session and we'll advertise it to 3 or 4 sort of key student clubs where we know we're typically drawing our students from.
Deb, are you able to share your screen? All right.
So we also put up posters and we work with our advisors so that everybody understands, what those opportunities are. And then within engineering, we certainly have more than the short programs. Dr. Camille George put together today the opportunity for folks to better understand what all of those components are. And so this was just a short presentation that was shared. And so really looking at an overview of, where are we going? How will you grow in terms of your technical knowledge, in terms of understanding comparative systems, in terms of what is this going to provide you, perhaps post-experience, and then, where is it that we're going and what are you going to experience? So that's an example of what we've shared. And then every year we've kept a blog as well. And I find that students find that helpful to understand what others have done, where they've been, and what that experience has looked like, and to hear it in students in their own voice in terms of what that experience, what that impact was. So those are some of the things that we share with students.
That is fantastic. Those are great slides. I know yesterday, which is when the engineering study abroad info session was, 30 students attended, which for an info session on Zoom, that's incredible. And I just want to add in that that idea of this long-term outreach about study abroad really will help you out and all of your colleagues out in the long run, that it isn't just about recruiting for your one program, but how do you make the conversation about study abroad happen year round so that, Deb is going to be leading her program in J-term 22, great, but it's also even better that she has first year students thinking about, okay, well, I'm hoping that I can be in the J-term 24 one. It's that really kind of building up that idea that this is something that you do in this major, in this college, and these are some of the opportunities that are out there. It's really going to help you and your colleagues who might be doing something differently out as well. So that's just one suggestion that I would make. What aspects of your program do you feel were most impactful for students? What do you think were the ones that have really stuck with them, and for, you've all led your program a number of years ago, at least 3 or more for the first time. So what are the things that you hear from, maybe alumni of your program who maybe have even moved on from St. Thomas that have really stuck with them, and how might new program directors who are developing new programs think about finding some of their own experiences like that?
Well, I can jump in. In talking with our alums after they've graduated, who've been on the London course with us, it's usually about one student a year will say, because of that course, I learned about this aspect of the profession, and that's what I decided to do. And generally, this aspect of the profession they decided on is something that they don't get much exposure to in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, more on the international side of insurance in our case. So I guess the advice is, what is it about your location that you wish to go to that you simply can't do in the Twin Cities? What does it offer that we don't have here? And just sort of hit that hard.
For my students, they said, number one is they gained so much knowledge about China. Of course, that's number one reason I want them to learn China. That's the course. But beyond that, they told me that their personal awareness and their global awareness expanded dramatically after the course. Okay? So they said some of them learned Chinese or learned a little bit about the culture, but learning in a classroom can never compare to actually visiting on site. And they learned lifetime lessons. They learned how to understand different values, different culture from the lens, mindsets of native people. They've become more educated, more objective, like global citizens. They understand the world better. So I think that's the most impactful lesson for my students.
I would echo some of that. I think it's really, it's building that cultural competence, which is going to make them better engineers, right? So, well, for example, when we go down to Naples, the ghettos that we go through are on the high-speed train are significant. And our students have never seen that before. They've never had that experience. And they don't really understand it until they have a chance to experience it, and more importantly, reflect on it and have a really thoughtful understanding of, what does that mean? How does that exist here? How will that impact you in your future engineering careers? What is that intersection, right? So asking these questions, and from that, what I see is they grow in ways they would have never grown in the US. So their understanding of the outside world that influences who they are, and their ability to set their own goals for growth in this area, it's almost like there's like this, you see it, right? There's like this spark that happens. And it doesn't happen with everyone, but for those students that really catch it, I see some significant impacts. And then what I've seen now, we're a brand new program in civil engineering. We've had 3 classes, right? We're in our 3rd class that's graduating. So we don't have a ton of students that are out there. We have some of our mechanical engineers, some of our electrical engineers, but what I'm hearing, at least from like the civil engineering side, is that when it comes to projects that, you know, perhaps there's been some challenges in terms of engineering in the US, they're walking into these conversations with this whole other dimension that they can bring to the conversation. So it's much more richer in terms of understanding who they're designing for and what those needs of those folks might be and how it might be different than you know, experiences that folks who haven't had that experience might have.
Thank you so much. From your perspective of teaching, what is the biggest difference between teaching a course abroad compared to, you know, of course, right now, many of you are teaching hybrid or Zoom courses, but compared to teaching, you know, a normal course, whether on campus or you know, online?
I'll jump in. There's exhaustion. there's the time difference. There's the just getting into the mode, right, of being in a different time zone. And as I've kind of alluded to before, there is with a J-term class, they're with their friends. So it's sort of the exhaustion and keeping their attention, keeping their curiosity up, keeping them engaged. While they honestly want to be engaged, there's also just some physical factors like, you know, they're 6 hours behind kind of thing. So that's one of the challenging things I've noticed.
I'd add 2 things to that. One, and this is probably true when you teach a course in a J-term versus a regular semester, but especially when it's abroad, I feel, is that I think you have to realize that you might not be covering as much content, but it's more likely the students are going to retain what you do cover. So it's kind of a trade-off there. So letting go on like, oh, well, during the fall semester, I cover, you know, chapters 1 through, you know, 15, and oh gosh, gotta get through that. No, cover what you can. They'll retain it better because of the experience that they're having. And then the other thing that surprises me and comes up to greater or lesser extent, depending on the group, is the social dynamic, because these students aren't just taking a class together. I mean, as Deb mentioned, they're living together as well. And so that causes issues sometimes that, you know, can really derail things a little bit. So being aware that the social side of things is influencing the academic side of things sometimes is, you know, there's probably not, I don't have great strategies for it, but just, you know, that can certainly happen.
Yeah, study abroad course requires so a lot of planning, There are so many details you have to pay attention to, from like how to space all the lectures, all the exam dates, all the requirements. When are the journals due? When are the essay articles due? And you have to think from the student perspective. Okay, do they have the energy, the balance between the workload and they're like immersing in the culture. So there's a lot of planning, and there's also uncertainty. Like the first time when the program was offered, I had no idea how many students would apply. Okay, absolutely no idea. Okay, the second time a little bit better, especially this year. So we were in China in January. Okay, our return flight was on January 23rd. On the night before our return flight, I received a warning about COVID-19. So we got lucky. So I can't help thinking, what if like it's 1 week prior to the end of the program, we got a warning and there is this you know, virus spreading in China. So we might have to cancel our program or come back early. So yeah, there is a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of planning. But to me, it's all still worth it. Like you build a unique, different relationship with your student. them too. Okay, they have this unique cohort. They make lifetime friends. So it just still so worth it. I really enjoy doing that.
Thank you. And to follow up from your question there, you've all led this multiple times. You've all proposed for J-term 2022. Why do you keep doing it? What is so rewarding about leading students abroad? Because it is not easy.
It is so rewarding to see that my students said they had some of the best days in their entire life. The memories and experiences are gonna with them for the rest of their, so that's very rewarding to see that. So yeah, of course, I want to do it again.
And sort of I'll add on a selfish reason. I agree with what Hong said, but a selfish reason is you just develop a better relationship with most of these students than you do during a regular semester course. I mean, it's a tighter knit community that you're a part of, and that's awesome.
I think my response would echo a lot of what you've both shared, and that is just seeing that personal growth that students experience, and it wouldn't be replicated here. So a personal growth in a dimension that really needs that, that foreign atmosphere in order to develop. And then to see that, they're developing both personal and professional skills that otherwise wouldn't perhaps develop at quite the rate or the intensity that they would here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for proposing your programs again for 2022. We are looking forward to working with you all. So that's all of the questions that I have, but we do have a number of people in attendance, and I do want to open it up to questions from our attendees. Please feel free. I think I set it so that you can unmute yourselves now. So if you want to jump in and ask a question, or if you want to put it in the chat box and I can ask it there too, please go ahead.
This is Eric Fort from chemistry. I've got two questions, if you're willing. So one is, it seems like all three of your programs are pulling mostly majors, and so for those of us who have smaller overall majors, advice on getting your program to fill if you're not pulling, or how you think the experience would change if you didn't have majors. And then the second follow-up is, how do you personally, or the collective you of your department, choose the partners to teach the course? Is it, you ahead of time know who you work best with, or is the department kind of helping you find or are you not co-teaching when you go abroad? Those are my two questions. Thanks.
I can jump in with sort of my answers. When we started, our major was considerably smaller than it is now, and that's why we did two things. We decided to go with a required course for the major, and we only did it every other year, because we simply would not have had the numbers to support such a course every January. And then in terms of how you pick who you're going to do it with, well, we don't have too much choice in our program, but we had a very natural choice with my co-instructor, Peter Young, who works in the graduate program, Opus Graduate Business School. He had the contacts in London. So yeah, we'll go with him. You should ask him why he went with me, I guess.
Yeah, our program actually helped recruiting some minors because it counts toward econ international studies. So we actually use it as a way to increase the number of enrollment. We get more minors this way. But we have a total, like, it's up to the program director. Who do you want to work with? You choose your own partner. There's no like order from department chair, or you're highly independent. Okay, you pick who you want to work with.
And I would encourage if you can set up something along the lines of what Dr. Camille George did with the online experience, and here are all the different options that you can have. That was really helpful to just have that whole menu available for our students. And then I teach the class by myself. Not because I'm antisocial, but it keeps the cost down, and it's a pretty significant cost. And I would just rather have students have that experience. So I know that's an option as well, primarily because we have a strong partner while we're in Rome. So should something happen to me, the students would be taken care of.
Thank you. Yes, that strong partnership I know with Deb's course in Rome really is important, that we rely upon Claudio for. He serves as our second program director. Any other questions?
Well, and to jump in on the second part of Eric's question of choosing a provider, that can happen in a couple different ways. Sometimes program directors may have a contact or someone already on site that we can work with. Otherwise, our office has a number of existing relationships, so we can help you identify that too.
I have a question about your providers. How did you connect with them? How did you reach out to them? How did you make the decision to go with the organization that you decided to go with, or find a local individual to work with? How did you create that connection?
My colleague led a study abroad course in Botswana. So I talked to her. I would recommend talk to people who have led study abroad programs and ask about the providers, ask about their experiences and valuable lessons learned. That's how I started working with CIE, because one of my colleagues recommended CIE to me.
Similarly, Peter Young, the co-instructor I work with, he's worked with the group AIFS and has had good experiences. And this time I actually reached out to a couple of other places and basically got bids from a couple other places as well, which in London is perhaps easier to do than in many other locations. But I don't know, it's kind of like shopping around for a general contractor in a sense.
Interesting. Thanks.
I might jump in. Jen and I had that conversation as well with the independent contractor that we use. He has been reliable, and we've been using him kind of forever. It is a very small population over there, and everybody knows the other small contractors. So should we have shopped around, I think just being culturally astute, he would have found out. And so there is that component, right? And so just being sensitive to what is the market, how does the market work, just like you would want some cultural competence when you're walking into a different scenario, better understanding how that different location might work and how those different service providers interact with one another is a helpful thing to understand as well.
But is your individual as an independent person, how did you make that initial contact then?
Yep, so it was a former director who had reached out to him, and frankly, he's spent a lot of time kind of developing the partnership along with us and providing some pretty unique experiences that we wouldn't have gotten from some other independent service providers. And he really strove and has worked to better understand what are our needs and what are we trying to accomplish with our program.
Nice, thank you.
And I will add in that the Office of Study Abroad can help you make those contacts that we have for professors like Mike Hong and Deb, who've led programs. And so we know who they've worked with, we know who others have worked with. And there are others in other places where we might not have had programs before that, with the program in China. The connection was actually from a program in Botswana, that we have those connections as well, that some of these organizations, we might have worked with them in one location, but they have staff in another location, and they have their infrastructure that that supports all of these programs. So that's something that we can also help you with, and we do that all of the time.
Thanks.
And additionally, I would add that all the partners that we've worked with in the past and any partner that we'll work with in the future, there's a really extensive vetting process for those providers and partners as well, that you will have help with that from the Office of Study Abroad staff, and we will ensure that the partner that you're going to work with is up to all of the industry standards, up to the university standards for both educational purposes and for risk purposes, that will make sure that the person you're working with is completely legitimate.
I was just going to weigh in and say that Jen has been amazing to work with, so definitely tap into the Study Abroad office. She's very thoughtful. She's really asked some great questions and has helped navigate that. So they're an amazing group to work with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Love the shout out, of course. Any final questions? We still have a few minutes before our scheduled time is up. Seems like we might have run out of questions, but I'm going to go out on a limb and volunteer all of our panelists that I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you all. If you have any questions specifically to them, in the Office of Study Abroad, we are around if you have just want to hear more about the process, want to have specific questions, or just have a little brainstorming. We love to do this. If you are thinking about a January program ever, the proposal is always open in August, about 18 months in advance of the January, and close in that October, about 16 months in advance. And that's because, especially for new programs, the development process is long. And especially if we're looking at a new location or a new provider, we want to make sure we have everything ready. And the kind of hidden timeline is that we start taking student applications on April 1st. So it's not, so far in advance of that January, but it's when students start applying. And so every February when courses are announced, students are really waiting for that list to come out of what's going to be offered for the following January. And so that's why we have to start working so far in advance. Thank you to all of our panelists today. Thank you to everyone who attended. This will be put up on our Study Abroad 1 St. Thomas page. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.